Hello and welcome to the Selling's Creative Podcast, a podcast exploring creativity's role in sales. I'm your host, Brad Eather, a digital communications sales enabler, helping established businesses to sell on social. Today, we're going to tackle a subject that I've deliberately avoided on this podcast until now. One of the reasons is it's very complex and everybody's got an opinion. That's right, we're going to be talking about AI. AI's made people feel uncertain about the future. It's made people excited about the future. But what I really want to unpack today is what AI actually means for us right now. Because it's one thing to project what might happen in the future, but it's another thing entirely to understand how it's already changing the way that we think and operate in business today, which is exactly why I wanted to talk to someone who lives and breathes this stuff. Someone who not only understands AI, but understands it in a business context. Someone with an MBA and a background in media communications and AI-focused data science. Please welcome to the show the head of AI strategy and solutions at Warp Development, Gaurav Devsarmah. I hope I got that right.
That's correct, Brad. Thanks for that. Thanks for the warm intro. And really excited to be here. As you said, I think it's a space where everything is changing so fast. And I think it's always interesting to talk about different verticals in that sense or jobs and how kind of AI impacts that. So very keen to get started today.
So, like you said, AI is changing at a rapid rate, like so rapid that it's impossible for everybody to understand every single aspect of AI and where's it going. What kinds of businesses do you focus on at Warp Development?
Yeah, at Warp, we focus on pretty much everything really. In terms of we don't look at niches in that sense, and that's one of the main things about AI because it's affecting everyone. It's not something that is just for one industry or another. Obviously, we do see patterns where the immediate return of investment is different for different industries. For example, I think manufacturing is a very interesting space in AI because like historically a lot of manufacturers did not actually make the jump from, let's say, step one to step two, three, in terms of things like, um, having a CRM or having, those kind of SaaS products that they can use like an ERP system. Whereas it's a lot of just Excel spreadsheets where complex modeling for pricing or like, operational data is just set up. And quite weirdly, now AI actually helps them jump from, let's say, step one to step four, because suddenly you don't need to actually hire someone who's an expert in managing Salesforce, for example, or HubSpot, because what he can do is he can build the solutions and create custom software for these firms based on the data they already have. Obviously, the quality of data and things like that, which I think we'll talk about later today. I'll go more deeper into that. That matters. But I think you can see the shift in that one industry where suddenly you can bypass some of the steps that you'd normally kind of be forced to take in a non-AI world. So that's one. I guess with also manufacturing, I think there's a lot of issues around knowledge retention. And that's probably not just manufacturing. I think it's across all industries where a lot of people would have stayed in the business for 20, 30 years. And now they are coming close to retiring or just leaving the business. And then what happens normally is you lose all that knowledge that they have kind of accumulated in the business because a lot of it is just in their head and it's not documented and things like that. So I think now we have it, we are kind of changing this where we're trying to quantify as much as we can, all of that. So, you're bringing this knowledge out from their head in a way where you create documents and you create like some sort of, I guess, any documentation that can be fed into the AI. So even after people leave the business, that knowledge stays. And then I think that becomes almost your IP. So yeah, I think we can chat about all that as we go forward today.
Perfect. So before we go any further, I want to sort of kick things off talking about a little bit about you. And at the top of the interview, I mentioned that you've got several degrees from communications to data science. How do you think that knowledge and experience has given you a unique perspective on how AI is playing out, and how has it set you up to where you are now?
And that's a very interesting question because I think when you look at people who are in AI, I don't really have a very conventional background in that sense. And I think that's the advantage I have is I look at it from a business perspective rather than I think it's very easy to get lost in all the technical details. And I think that's been my advantage coming from a diverse background in terms of I'm looking at this from a perspective of, okay, forget about the AI. What is the problem out here, or what is the opportunity out here? And then how are we going to actually solve it? Do we need AI, or is there something else that we can actually do? And then you go backwards from that and then use AI if it's needed. Whereas I think what we see a lot in terms of some um, very talented individuals who are very heavily, they would have done PhDs, and they have a very heavy data science and AI background. They focus on all the technical details, and they're incredible in that in terms of their understanding of let's say the statistics, the math, and also the understanding of models and things like that. But the thing is, when you are solving a business problem, the stakeholders don't care what models you use or what math you are kind of, I guess, preparing to solve something. They care about, I have this problem. This keeps me up at night. How can you solve it? And I think my advantage really has been that with my background, I focused on that just quite naturally rather than looking at all the technical aspects and the coding aspects, which I think would be the case if someone's heavily coming from an AI or machine learning.
Yeah. Because I think, just for the audience that maybe, AI is confusing for quite a lot of people. And you sort of brought up two different aspects. I think that a lot of people are using AI, ChatGPT, that's what they're using. And I think that there's sort of two ways that fundamentally you can use it. One of them you brought up models, and we're going to get into AI agents. But I think that there's one way that you can use it, which is using ChatGPT, and you're using it for creative output or a partner in writing and synthesizing your ideas, getting words onto a piece of paper. The other one is more like models. So more like a knowledge hub, if you're not familiar with the concept of models. And essentially what that is, it gives you access to process large amounts of information. But I think that where AI has taken the leap, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in qualitative data. What we used to be able to do with quantitative data is find commonalities. AI is now giving us the ability to find commonalities within qualitative data, which is much more rich. So I, I want to hear your perspective on those two models. First of all, from maybe put yourself in the position of a salesperson and maybe how they could use it, the creative side, just generalized AI. And then let's put it into a business context and talk about AI agents and how we can actually start leveraging IP for a business advantage.
Absolutely, and those are great points. I think when I answer your first question, I might actually annoy a few people, to be fair,
Mhm.
because the thing is, I think yes, it's good to use tools like ChatGPT for, let's say, personalized outreaches, be it on LinkedIn, be it on, I guess, through emails and things like that. But that's just, I would say, a starting point. And I think that, yeah, you get the intuition behind that in what works, what doesn't. But where I think I am more excited about is making sure a salesperson, because traditionally most, let's say, if you're not in technical sales, salespeople wouldn't have a lot of the technical understanding if you're selling a software product, for example. Whereas I think with AI tools now, it pushes salespeople towards those kind of technical understanding. And I think that's the thing that I am more interested in rather than creating personalized outreaches and things like that. Whereas I think it's about, if I am trying to create a proposal, for example, for some software implementation that my company is selling, and I don't really have a technical background. With ChatGPT and other tools now, what I can do is I can actually create a proposal, maybe not 100%, but at least I can get pretty far with some of these technical details if I look at my other projects, what we have done as a company, and then get some like understanding from ChatGPT or other tools, and really kind of I guess save time between going back and forth with, let's say, a developer who would help me with the technical things, technical aspects in the proposal. And you can be quite creative, because then um, you have your capability of sales, and then you're also adding AI tools as capability of understanding some technical stuff, and then saying, you know what, this is what we spoke about in the meeting with a client. This is the thing that the client wants to achieve. These are their problems. How can we make sure that we create a really good proposal? And that's the starting point again. And I think never, at least yet, and just blindly copy and paste stuff. It's always, it's a good starting point, but then you also have to put your own mind towards it. So that I think is quite valuable in my opinion. But I think personalized outreaches, it's actually um, it's something that I just think there's so many companies that are doing it right now, in terms of just scraping LinkedIn, scraping other social media, and then sending personalized emails or LinkedIn messages. And I just think it's pretty much a race to the bottom. It to me it feels like one of those tar pit ideas where initially it looks good, but now there's like 500 companies every day that rock up doing the exact same thing, and getting funded by a lot of them are funded by, let's say, Y Combinator, to which I definitely find a bit surprising. But I think what that happens ends up happening is um, you have this absolute slop of emails in your inbox, and it can be as personalized as uh, it can be the best personalized email, but if I have 200 emails every day coming into my inbox, I think that becomes a problem no matter what. So obviously there's email filters and things like that, but I think still that's not what I think would be valuable in the future for like AI in sales, for example. I know I've spoken a fair bit out here, so you can feel free to ask me any questions.
Yeah. So maybe let's hold off on going into the agent discussion for a second, because I think that what gets lost in this conversation of AI is the fact that there's a human. This is just as much about humans as it is about AI. And I know that me and you both share the commonality in the fact that we've both done a communications degree. And there was a philosopher that we're both familiar with called Marshall McLuhan, who wrote The Media is the Message. And one of his core philosophies was that as technology develops, any advancement in technology can be seen as an extension of ourselves. What one of the easiest ways to understand this is just jumping in a car. Without a car gives you the ability to go further, but you can also feel the car. You become one with the car. You can feel where the edges are, for example. But AI is doing that. It's changing a different aspect of what it means to be human. But what I want to talk about is sort of the behavioral changes, the traits and things that are changing. And I suppose going back to what we were just discussing is, if you were taking that example of the email, right? And all of a sudden we're oversaturated by the emails, the human becomes desensitized to that. Where do you think that, how do you think we should be using AI to actually stand out and be more human, be the author of AI and using it as a actual tool to help us be more unique than just another AI agent talking to another AI agent, I suppose. What's your thoughts on that? I'm not sure if the questions, if the
No,
question's
that
all
was that
that
was that was really
clear.
good. That was really good. I think I'll give you an example. I think which I find really really valuable is I will some of the AI voice things, so you can talk in real time. So what I'll do is I'll give context about the company and a meeting that I might have, an important meeting, and then I will actually simulate that meeting with the AI, let's say inside ChatGPT. It's absolutely incredible and kind of creepy how many times the AI has actually come back and asked me questions, which I thought, oh, that's a unique question, and it's the same question I get asked in the meeting later.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of preparation in that sense where it's like having access to an expert 24/7 in, let's say, sales or any other kind of domain. So that's, I will say, I think I'm a bit biased in this because I think naturally, like, I have always been dumb enough to kind of start doing things that I have no idea about.
Yeah,
But I think with AI, it just takes it to the next level because now I might not have an idea about something, but I always know that I have this kind of co-pilot or like an intern that'll kind of give me info about. So that's a big kind of behavioral change. I feel if anyone that uses AI, let's say daily in their workflows, they would kind of, I think, relate to this, where it's like you can say yes to a lot more things because if you have that agency, if you have that initiative, you just know that you'll kind of figure out things that you might not have any idea about. And that changes a lot, right? Because it's like, if I have a sales meeting and it's highly technical, I don't have a developer available today.
Mm.
And that happened a lot when I was um, working at the data consulting firm. It was always like, because developers have their own kind of job to do, so they might not be always available to jump on a call with you if you're non-technical. But now you can actually still prepare quite well for those meetings, and then you can immediately see how much of a behavioral change that is. You can create demos now as a salesperson. You can create demos of something that the client might want without writing a single line of code. Again, that's another kind of big change. I don't think it's happened broadly yet, but I think the initial aspects that at least we are doing a lot at Warp kind of show where the world's kind of heading.
Yeah. Because something that I believe, especially from a sales perspective, is that soft skills is where I would be putting. If I was a salesperson coming into the job for the first time, I'd be saying, develop your soft skills, develop your soft skills. Because you said something really interesting there. You said you're dumb enough to try things that you haven't tried before. But what I think that AI actually does, it gives people, rather than niching down, it gives people a lot more contextualized information. So if I'm dumb enough to go out there and find the information, contextualize complex information, and dumb it down in a way that somebody else can understand, that as a salesperson is far more beneficial than having the technical know-how. Just having that broad understanding. How do I get the information? How do I understand that information? How do I communicate that information? Like it it really makes it a lot simpler. Whereas you might have to spend hours with a developer trying to understand the nuances of what's possible. Now we can just we can literally ask exactly what we want, just get the dot points. One of the hardest parts about getting information out of a seller and a developer are two very different people.
Yeah.
And sometimes sitting down and having a discussion with them, those two people, you could spend hours trying to get the information out just because you're not talking on the same plane. You're asking the questions and their ability to answer it the way that you want it answered is just, it could take hours. It could take hours. And I really like the idea. I personally love how AI is just being able to simplify the information. If it's not the information that I want, I can then just reiterate. And I mean, if I can't get the answer within 3 prompts, like, I'd be very, very surprised.
Yeah.
So,
I think 100%. Other thing I think um, that is, I guess, happening is, I think we're moving from pitching
Mhm.
to co-creation in terms of a lot of these solutions, because it's what will end up happening. And I was talking about this to a friend actually. It's everyone's got their note takers now that are doing real-time transcription and stuff like that in the meetings, right? So I am as, let's say, a salesperson. I'm in a meeting with a client, and my note takers transcribing in real time on what the client requirements are, what they're doing. I can just connect it to a designing tool that's run by, let's say, an AI, and that tool can then create uh, designs and demos like in real time in terms of, and that becomes, I think, like you're not just pitching, you're actually bringing the client to create something with you right in that call, or even if it's not in that call, but later. But I think I feel like it's I don't think I'm explaining it too well because I think it's still kind of fresh in my head.
let's talk about, let's explain what an agent is, because I think once we've explained what an agent is, this chat will make a lot more sense. So
Sure.
tell us, what's an agent?
That is, it's a very interesting question, because if you ask 10 people what is an agent, you'll get 10 different answers right now. So in my definition of an agent, because it's very easy to get lost between automation versus an agent. So I'll start with automation, where I think a normal traditional automation is basically where you know exactly, you can predict what's happening. So it's a lot of like kind of box assumptions where there's only a limited number of things that can happen, so that you can kind of build a solution to just focus on that. Whereas now with an agent, you don't need to code it in a way where it's only like, if this happens, that happens, that happens. You don't need to do that. Whereas an agent can decide on the go, on the fly, based on what's happening, that, okay, I need to do X or I need to do Y. So what we are doing, and that's, you can do either single agent, which is basically you're connecting this AI model to carry out a task for you, be it, for example, if, sorry, I'm just trying to think, okay, update something in HubSpot based on a call I had or something like that, right? And I think that could be an agent, could be just normal automation based on what I guess the exact use case is. So that's one agent. Basically, you can create these solutions that can make their own decisions on the go based on like what's the best criteria. And you can also create multi-agents, which is one agent, let's say, does the research for you for a prospect, and then it provides that research to the second agent, which then creates a proposal based on whatever's been done and what your company information is. And then the third agent might actually kind of, based on that, generate a lead score on how likely this prospect is going to convert or something like that. Those
So,
are, yeah.
because this is my understanding for anyone, like if we bring it all the way back out to an LLM like ChatGPT, what an agent does is contextualize information. So we set up parameters around what information we want it to have access to, what information we don't, and a potential task that we want it to fulfill. Is that right?
Yes, basically, I think agents are, they move from passive AI, which is, let's say, ChatGPT. I would call it as passive AI, because you're asking something, it's providing you a response, but it's not really doing something. Whereas with agents, it carries out a task or a set of tasks. So that's that would be like my kind of definition. But then again, you can, I think, depending on the definition, I guess you can, I get dissected different ways. But
So, like, if we were, I think everybody will be familiar with like Microsoft Copilot in terms of a meeting. Most people will have access to transcript notes, and that will it'll give you the meeting notes for the discussion that you've just had. That is an agent in itself, right? That is an AI that's been set up for a particular set of purposes, and the outcome is at the end of the call, you've got a transcript and you've got your meeting notes. Very basic. But in a business context, what we're talking about now is like every piece of IP that a business may have related to anything from the sales funnel to the technical aspects of a job to the legal requirements that you might need to be familiar with. We can actually create an AI agent that is essentially like a master employee, I suppose, someone who's had 50 years of experience throughout the entire lifespan of the company, and pass that information from one agent to another to get the outcome that we want. And that's what we're working towards in the area of agents. Yeah.
yeah, that's, I guess, you don't always need to hook into your own data in terms of the knowledge base, but obviously for any business, that's where the value is. It's connecting your SharePoint to an LLM, obviously within secure environments like Azure or AWS, so your data doesn't actually go to third parties and it's all protected.
Great point.
Yeah, that's because I think that's one of the main questions I get all the time. It's what's happening to the security and cybersecurity side of things. And I think it's all protected if when you host it inside like the Microsoft and Amazon services. So that's not an issue at all. So yeah, I think that's one. And also some businesses would like to connect it to their Salesforce data, HubSpot data, and then fetch info from there. So basically, I think it's kind of crazy because it's such an interesting space. What's happening is over the last 20 years, everything's got like SaaSified. It's like there's a SaaS for this, there's a SaaS for that. And now enterprises have their data in like 20 different systems. But for this AI agent to do uh, the task well and also to unlock new capabilities, what you need is all that info in a central repository, which is basically a lot of what we do. And then what happens is then you can really mix and match those qualitative data that's scattered over everything, and start to, merge them to find those insights and patterns, and really generate those kind of AI related information that was previously just not available.
So is it fair to say that if there's a small business out there who's considering it, part of the element of business change in this environment is organizing information, existing information, in a way that AI understands?
That is a big, definitely one of the kind of most important points, because it's like garbage in, garbage out that has happened in traditional like data modeling. That doesn't really change now. The other thing, I think that the models are getting quite strong to even pick up some the structures where it might not be optimal. And I think as these keep getting better, maybe that'll improve. But it's always a good practice to make sure you have naming conventions, because a lot of the times, to be fair, most organizations would just have a document one, that's it. And then you're thinking, what is document one? And then, or things like that. Or you'll have 20 versions of the same document, and then different people are making updates to different versions of the document. So you don't really know which one's the last kind of main document that you should look at. So things like that will confuse the AI when you build solutions. So it's kind of important to have some sort of like data management policies on your organization. That's always a good place to start. And the other thing I think I tell everyone is start thinking of creating documentation, creating files, not for humans, for like AIs, because in a kind of a machine friendly format.
What does
And
that
it's like
mean? What does that mean?
so it's like, if, for example, for markdown files, like .md files work really well with giving instructions to AI and things like that. So and the other thing is, if I have a complex Excel spreadsheet, traditionally I won't actually state out maybe all the formulas that I've used, or why I have done something, what's like in just text, right? But now I would actually suggest people, when they're building this models and stuff in Excel or wherever, write down in text on what you have done, what's the value behind it, what's the reasoning behind it, because then when you feed it into an AI model for analysis, the AI has more context. So that you are actually creating this stuff for downstream like AI solutions, and that's like a behavioral change, which obviously no one would have done before. Or you are having to create documentation and pages and pages of documentation to just instruct the agents on what they should do when they, okay, if you look at this file, then always do this, or if you go towards this SharePoint site, you should do this. So all of that's becoming instructions.
So what I'm hearing is like contextual information, but I think what people misunderstand is that AI is very good right now at analyzing certain types of information. So if we had a look and said AI could read, AI can see, and AI can hear, right? If we were to put it down to that, AI can read very, very well. And I mean, until last week, maybe my opinions changed this week, but AI couldn't see as well. You can't put, if you were to put an image in front of it, its ability to understand that and contextualize an image is different from if it could read. Yeah.
It depends. I think its vision abilities are actually quite good. And I am always surprised that there's a feature in ChatGPT, for example, where you can switch on the camera, and in real time you can show it the camera around, and the AI actually looks at what's happening. And I have been amazed at how accurate it is to actually tell me in real time on what is around me or things like that, which is and I think it's a feature that I thought would have a lot more hype, but it hasn't, because for me it's like, if I'm a manufacturer, and I work as a technician, for example, in a facility, that would be incredible for me, because if I can just show it around, and then it connects to my database or SharePoint with all the info, then immediately I have like a senior engineer who can help me out without me having to actually go out and ask someone, oh, you know what, there's a fault out here, what should I do? And things like that. So I think its vision capability is actually really good, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah. So what would you be advising your clients? What format would you, if they were building an agent? If it was just, say, for example, they've got a bunch of video content, they've got a bunch of written content, where would you start in that feeding it into an agent?
What do you mean by format?
A content format. So
Okay, like
yeah.
videos, basically that. I think that definitely depends on the end use case. So I think depending on what's at play, I think that's where it's kind of hard to give like I guess one answer in terms of that. So I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it basically I think it could be anything because these things are like so flexible. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Because for example, one of the most popular use cases is looking at RFQs, and then the AI analyzes RFQs, which is a bit of text analysis plus vision, because there's sometimes there'll be drawings and things like that which need vision capabilities. And then it'll go back and look into your past projects, what profit margins have you made with similar projects and things like that, and then marry up the RFQ analysis with that. And then you can build different agents for downstream processing, which then will give you the actual code on or estimates on what this project, I guess, might cost you. And you can have vision capabilities, you can have text capabilities. I think those two are probably the most popular right now because we haven't really gone to like the audio stuff yet because most business data is not really in audio format.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So I I know at the beginning of the podcast I mentioned that I wanted to talk about I wanted to avoid the future, but let's go into a bit of futurist thinking because there it's hard to talk about AI to talk without talking about the implications of maybe where it's going. But I want to talk about hiring rather than firing today. And I want to think about a question that I have, and I know that you probably don't have the answer, so it's just worthwhile having a discussion about it. Pathways. If now we have the ability to make essentially agents with high level thinking, where does the role of a junior coming straight out of university or school fit into the context of all this now, when there's just such a massive jump of fundamental understanding of some of the, whatever the role it is that they're in, to actually applying it? What do you think? Where do you think the pathways of a junior coming into the professional workforce might end up?
Great question. First, I think, do you mean junior in one specific domain or do you mean just in general?
In general, so yeah, in general, if it sounds like you've got quite a good understanding of the manufacturing space, so maybe like even just an engineer coming into the manufacturing space.
Sure. I think this is like one of the important almost dilemmas, and I think you'll see on LinkedIn and Twitter about software engineers probably being the most discussed topic in terms of what happens to junior software engineers, for example, because if ChatGPT is at the level of like a junior engineer in terms of coding abilities, and it's only going to get better, what happens? For me, I think the roles change. That's what happens in terms of, and obviously I could be absolutely wrong out here. Making predictions in the AI space is the worst thing you can do because
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
changes so quickly. But for me, I think it's about, because to create this agents, you will need a lot of human input in terms of what you want out of it, right? In terms of documentation, preparing the architecture and things like that. And depending on the complexity, maybe one of the roles that juniors will have is basically doing that, where you're kind of maybe looking at what prompts work better for like what, instead of like writing. I guess that's like the first stage of someone writes a set of prompts and then or like set of instructions. Then that gets passed to a senior developer who then kind of fine tunes on what works, what doesn't. So it's, if you look at it, it's a bit like writing code right now, because you start with some basic stuff, and then obviously senior developer would look at it and change stuff and fix bugs and things like that. So it's similar in terms of that. And I think it's also about, I think the senior devs in this scenario might be more about managing agents, where it's almost like what I like to call it as HR for AI agents, because there'll be so many AI agents running around in your organization. Someone has to manage them, be it an outsourced provider or be it like a senior dev. So look at performance, look at accuracy, things like that. But the initial aspect in terms of designing an agent and bringing those kind of different almost blocks of Lego together probably could be something that is done by a junior. And I think, and I feel like more and more of these roles will end up getting pushed towards that kind of generalist flavor, where
Hmm.
I think right now, if there's a junior programmer, the junior programmer just writes code pretty much. Whereas I think maybe they're involved more in sales meetings where they're kind of drafting, designing, creating demos in the sales calls. They're not sure, but I think roles are definitely going to change a lot.
So, because what, just thinking about, I mean, the last major shift that we had was maybe social media, right? And I'm thinking marketers coming in, all of a sudden, junior roles became social media marketers. And then we're just having a discussion, right? So the junior roles become AI practitioners in this example. All of a sudden, we have a massive gap in understanding. And I think that part of the challenges that business faces with social media is that it's devalued work. There's such a high level of understanding that the people at the top who don't understand what actually goes into it and the nuances become devalued. And it's the ones, it's the people who are practitioners who actually have been there and done that and understand the nuances who actually become successful on a social media platform. I wonder if, and we're just talking, we're talking futurist thinking. No one's predicting anything here, but I'm wondering if the same sort of thing plays out in the role of new AI, when where there's a gap, there's almost a generational gap in digital understanding of how these things work in practice. And I think that the reason that I think it's important is because that if that's devalued, the opinion of the people doing it is potentially devalued as well. When in actual fact, maybe they should have a place at the table of decision making. Does that make sense? When I'm talking about that gap, there's a gap. It's like it's a junior role, but the knowledge that they have is actually should be influencing decisions.
But I think good organizations will not have that gap.
Mm.
Like I would say, because in any organization that kind of is well structured, if you are someone who's actually you have a lot of agency and you're coming up with good stuff, then I think that gap shouldn't exist. And in organizations where that gap does exist, I think that's no different than what is now. I would say in
Yeah.
terms of, I think it'd be a similar gap that will exist now in, let's say, a non-AI context. So I think I would say that's not even.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree. The thing that I would say that is that maybe AI is more pressing of an issue. Companies that have that gap, maybe they need to address that gap pretty quick in this scenario where they've had 20 years almost to deal with social media. I don't think they're going to get 20 years to adapt to this.
But I think if you are, let's say, a junior employee, or if you're in uni, right, this is
Yeah.
such an amazing opportunity for you, because if you start using these tools, right, and then you come onto a meeting, or you reach out to someone senior in your organization, or even forget about you do, let's say you don't even have a job, you're coming to an interview, and you research the company, and then you build a prototype that they might want using AI tools, which would have previously not been possible. Suddenly, like, the company has to listen to you. They're forced to listen to you, because I think a lot of this stakeholders, they don't really have the awareness yet. So if you are someone young, you are a junior, and you have that initiative, you can actually blow their minds. Then that kind of messaging gap that you're talking about doesn't really exist, because there is no other way but to take you seriously, because it is such a compelling factor. So I think that's why I tell everyone that play around with these tools. And then the only thing that honestly stops anyone to build really cool stuff right now is really just themselves, because there's so much that you can do, and you can test out the boundaries. For example, let's say I am a sales intern, and I see that the head of sales at this company has a massive problem in terms of, I don't know, prospecting or something. Just throwing out an example. But right now, even without a lot of coding abilities, I can kind of patch together something that kind of barely works, to maybe uh, like show my initiative that, oh, you know what, this might help you. Then suddenly you are going like 4 steps ahead to the head of sales to say, I tried building this for you because I think this might help you solve the problem. It might not help it, but it starts that conversation. It enables someone to actually move way further than what they would have done earlier.
That's a call to action for anybody that's watching this at uni right now, for sure. And I think that what we're talking about here is a very different way of thinking. And I think that in the context of this podcast, Selling's Creative, it's a great way to come into the last question and ask you, with everything that you know, what's your definition of creativity?
It's a really interesting question, and I think I always love when someone asks me this because um, if you look at traditional like creativity, like in terms of artistic abilities and things like that, I have none of it. So for me, the definition of creativity is a bit different. How I look at it is as being really creative because it's, and this is not just AI, this is just the internet in general. There's so much info. We live in an age where this knowledge is just abundant everywhere. And I think it's the best time to be alive in that sense, to kind of just soak up all of that. And I think where I see creativity is how can I use this kind of odd shaped Lego pieces to kind of bring it together to actually create my own version of something. And I think that's where I feel like I have my strengths, and where I think creativity fits in for me. It's looking at things that are a bit different. It's like trying to see, okay, you know what, this piece of Lego doesn't actually fit in here. But, I feel like there's something that I can do. Maybe shave off a bit on this thing to kind of merge it towards this and actually create something that solves a problem and that no one actually looked at earlier. So I think that kind of creativity is what I think I bring in terms of just making sense of this kind of different moving pieces and then almost bringing them together in kind of a non-conventional manner, which has served me well because in an area where there's like so much chaos right now in AI, I think if you are just looking at it from a common sense or like conventional side of things, you'll get overwhelmed quite quickly. It's all about bringing this different parts together and then kind of building stuff that actually solves something. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'll bring it back to that answer that you had before regarding how, like, maybe applying for a new role, because I really like that. You essentially turned the interview process or the application process upside down on its head. And you said, all right, if AI is possible, I can build something. The purpose of it's not to be perfect. The purpose of it is to show initiative. And I think that is a really creative way to get the attention and show initiative in the job application process. And I think that what you just described, your definition of creativity, is really flipping that thinking on its head and adding something, shaving those little Lego pieces and fitting them in to suit your purpose. I like it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it definitely helps you to be really weird. And I mean that in a good way, in terms of
Yeah.
how creative and how you can just go and do things, I guess. And I think that's been my experience. It's like I've got this tool that I can do anything with pretty much, and we are not like so early to this, and I don't even know what this will actually look like in 2 years' time because it's exciting and also scary in terms of the capabilities that might come.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Gaurav, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Where can we find you if you're looking for you?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Gaurav Devsarmah. So, and I think you can put it my LinkedIn profile somewhere in your podcast links. And also feel free to reach out to me at gaurav@warpdevelopment.com if you have any questions. That's my email, and I'm always happy to chat about anything and everything that's AI related. Like I love nerding out just kind of anything that is easily, because this is such an exciting space, and I think I am at times kind of starved of chats about just nerding out AI. So I'm always happy to kind of if you're in Adelaide, grab a coffee, or otherwise just reach out to me on LinkedIn or like on email.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, everybody out there, thanks for listening to the Sellings Creative podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe for more. And in the meantime, happy selling.